Well, this is Dateline News and Conversation. We're live, and we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on X. I've been waiting to do this show for quite a while. The title of the show is Our Mission to Russia. We came, we saw, we stayed. My guest tonight, my two good friends, two Americans living here in Yalta. We're going to talk about why we came, why we stayed, and we're going to tell the truth of what we've found. We're also going to talk about why we left the United States. This is not primarily a political show, although I am sure that people watching are going to say that we are Kremlin assets, that this is all propaganda. Well, I hope those of you that are watching will keep an open mind and will listen to what three Americans, me included, what we think about Russia, what we think about life here, and what we think about, we're going to stay away from politics, I hope. Anyway, my guests tonight, they're not really guests, they're partners. The three amigos, Richard Dihlman and Peter Frohwein. Guys, here we go.
Hello.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Okay, we're going to start with the old guy. That's you, Richard.
Okay.
I'm older than you are by a couple of years, but you have been in Russia the longest. Now, I want you to tell our viewers why you came to Russia, when you came, where did you come to? Peter and I know you didn't come to Moscow. You didn't come to Crimea. You went way the hell out there in Siberia. And so what was it? Richard, was it love?
Yeah, it wound up to be that way. Yes.
All right, so keep this brief now, as brief as you can, because we got the three of us that got to tell this story, our mission to Russia. So you've got the floor.
How I got here, and back in the beginning of 2013, I was online in a Herbalife forum, for Herbalife people, that representatives and distribution people and stuff like that. I was interested in maybe getting involved. I was taking some of the products and I was doing pretty good with it, losing weight and feeling better and stuff. And I met my wife, that is now my wife. She was on the forum and we started speaking and stuff. This was in early February of 2013, and I didn't know she was living in Russia at the time, because it was just on the forum. So we started talking, and then we started talking to each other on the side, on Skype and stuff like that. And one thing led to another, and then I realized she was in Russia and stuff. And we had really gotten in, and we were talking to each other so much. It was like a 12-hour difference between Connecticut, where I lived, and where she lived in the Krasnoyarsk region of southern Siberia. And we were talking every day. And I would get up and she'd be going to sleep, and just the opposite for me. And, we really become really close friends and talking and everything. And come around, and I was started around February that started. And then we were talking a lot, about all sorts of stuff, the family and all sorts of stuff, what it's like in Russia, what it's like living in America. And come around June, she says to me, what are you doing in September? I said, I don't know, really nothing. I was just working. I was 66 years old. I was 65 years old at the time. And he says, I'm going to take a vacation to Phuket. Why don't you meet me there? So I said, geez, I don't know. I didn't even have a passport at the time. And I did have a passport at one time, but it kind of expired. I never thought about it, So I says, yeah, let me think about it. So after a couple of weeks, I thought about it. I says, you know what? Why the hell not? I mean, I got some money. And that sounds pretty cool. I think maybe I'll go to Thailand. And so we met. We met in September in Thailand, in Phuket, Thailand. And she had her own hotel room, and I had my own hotel room because we didn't know, even though it was online and stuff. Things could get so what it would be like. But we really hit it off really well. It's as well as we were speaking on the Skype. So, and that's led to another thing. And then when I was spent 18 days in Phuket. It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful vacation. And she went back to Krasnoyarsk, and I went back to Connecticut, back to work and the whole thing like that. But we went back on Skype and talking to everybody, each other every day. And we really missed each other. But come around down toward the end of the year, we were really missing each other. And then the holidays, the Christmas holidays came in, and she said, "Why don't you come and visit me in Russia?" And I said, "Wow, I never thought of going to Russia." I said, "The hell with it. Yeah, maybe I will." So I did finally come in March 3rd of 2014. So April 15th of 2014, I came to the Krasnoyarsk, Russia, and my eyes were. I didn't know what. I didn't speak Russian very well. I was trying to learn it a little bit, but I didn't know what I was running into. An American and going out there, and it was still a little cold there. It wasn't it was cold at the beginning when I went there, but it starts to warm up in April and stuff. But that's what happened, and then again after April, I went back and and then I asked her to marry me, and she says okay, and her son and her grandson gave me their blessing. So what happened was when I went back to America in April, I was going to have to move. These conditions happening. It wasn't so great where I was living, and it deteriorated while I was gone to a point that I knew I was going to have to move. So I was faced with a deal. Well, here I am. I'm going to have to go get another apartment and made furniture, and it's going to cost me somewhere $8 to $10 grand. Your first year last, I didn't own the house at the time. I was renting. So I started saying to myself, I can't really quit working, even though I was sick. I wanted to, retire. I had some savings, savings, but not enough to really stop working. But when I went over to Krasnoyarsk, I was really blown away about the living conditions. I didn't know what it was like. It was beautiful. It was a really nice place. I mean, it was high class where I was at. I mean, really nice. We like in West Hartford, Connecticut. That's what about I was compared about. It was really nice. So we started thinking about we get married and stuff. What are we going to do? And I realized to the point that I'd be better off because the only thing I had was my smaller savings, and I had Social Security, which was at the time around $1,300 a month. But I realized that I could live there, no problem, on that. Comparing the Russian ruble to the dollar, I would be living a middle class lifestyle, and be able not to work. So I told my wife, I said, "Look, we can go to America, but we're going to live on a park bench in Connecticut, and we're both going to have to work, and it's not going to be easy." So I just decided to move to Russia, which was, just kind of a radical move for a lot of people would think, but I just said, I thought I could just, I think I'd be better off moving to Russia, and that's what I did. I moved to Russia, and I got married in July 18th of 2014, and I've been here ever since. But, we've done a lot of traveling, and I have been back to America last summer, but that's the short part to it.
Well, I know that you were out there in Siberia for a long time, but I know you were lonely. And I knew that when you told me that one of your neighbors had a horse and that the horse became your best friend you used to go talk to him at the fence every day.
Well, he was the best friend of me and my dog. I brought my dog with me, David. God bless him. He was 6 years old when I brought him to Russia, and he lived 8 years here.
That's
But
not
yeah,
bad.
you know,
That's not
I
bad.
brought my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to get into it. We're gonna talk about you coming to Crimea, where you've been now for the last few years. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to turn it over to our other amigo, our other American friend, Peter. And Peter has a different story on why he's here. So, Peter, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I guess it really started in late 2019. I was working at a small college as an engineering advisor for engineering students. I try to keep up with what's going on in the world, and in late 2019, I started seeing some things in the banking sector in the U.S. that seemed very concerning. I guess I don't. I was listening to, I think it was Glenn Beck. I don't listen to him much anymore, but Glenn said, "Hey, there's something called a repo market," which I had no clue what he was talking about. And he said, "This is where big banks borrow overnight money from other big banks." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "Something just happened in the repo market that's not good." He said, "I don't know what it is, but it's something big and it's not good." So that, I think, was the start of my kind of awakening. And then, fast forward a little bit into early 2020 when the COVID started kicking in, all kinds of things were happening at the government level and even from the economy that just didn't make any sense to me. So I kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And what I was finding was extremely concerning. I thought, wow, the fundamentals of the U.S. economy are in deep trouble, and the government's basically hiding this fact. So for about 2 years, I kept, when I initially started seeing this, I thought, this can't be this crazy. Well, after 2 years, I was completely convinced, yeah, what I was seeing was real. So I started thinking, looking around, going, this is going to end in an economic storm that really almost no one is prepared for. And then I started looking around the world and going, wow, this storm is just not going to be limited to the US. It's going to be Europe and many other parts of the world. So I started, that's I think was the start of, okay, looking around is like, okay, what economies in the world are still stable, run correctly, have very low debt, and it just kept coming up Russia. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna do research on Russia and Russian leadership, and really became very impressed at what I saw as far as the Russian leaders, which I think is basically opposite of what most Americans have been told, specifically like leaders like Vladimir Putin, that they've been brainwashed into thinking he's a dictator and a killer and and not a good man. And what I found was the complete opposite. Yeah, in fact, I believe he's a man of God. And I was looking at my leaders and comparing them to Russian leaders, like I don't have leaders who care about me. I mean, I don't think the leaders in the U.S. care about Americans at all. And so at that point, I thought, okay, well, I think it's just a matter of time before the U.S. economy, uh, before this, I would call it a perfect storm, starts. And so at that point, I thought, I'm going to, when this storm starts, well, initially I was like, okay, maybe I'll stay here and help get through the storm with friends and family. So I started talking to them and go, hey, I've got all this information. You need to look at it because what's coming is not good. Well, they just didn't want to look at it at all. And so after 2 years of trying to convince them of what I was seeing, they just refused. I thought, well, when this storm hits, I don't want to be here. And really, at that point, it determined, I think, the best place to be when this storm hits is Russia. So at that point, I had been online starting to learn some Russian. I met someone online who actually had moved to Russia. His name's Dan from the YouTube channel Wild Siberia, and he had made the offer to people who were watching. Hey, anyone who wants to come, I'll host them. I'll show them around, be a tour guide. Now he lives in Siberia, in Irkutsk, which is Irkutsk is right next to Lake Baikal, and it's above Mongolia. So we got to talking more, and I said, hey, I think I want to take you up on that offer. So, so I'm like, okay, sold all my assets here, booked a plane ticket, told Dan I'm coming, and flew to, UAE first, then to Hong Kong, and then to Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia. And then Dan and his girlfriend had come down from Russia by train, and we met. And just by circumstances, we had to be in Mongolia for a week. And then I got on a train after a week and went up to Russia. And my initial thinking was to live in Vladivostok. But I had talked to Dan, and I thought we had an agreement that I could be in Irkutsk for 2 weeks and kind of, he would show me around and be my tour guide. Well, that changed pretty quickly. We got into Russia to Irkutsk, and he's like, oh, you only have 3 days. I'm like, what? And at that time, I started thinking, well, Vladivostok doesn't seem like the right place. And I'd met someone online who lives in here in Crimea, in Alupka, which is a small village just west of Yalta. So I contacted him and said, hey, I'm thinking about coming to Crimea, to Alupka. Do you have any rental apartments there? He said, yeah, I've got a rental apartment here on my property. I'm like, okay. We talked, negotiated rent, and I said, okay, I'm coming. So jumped on a plane, got to Sochi, and then from Sochi got on a train, and from was actually in Sochi for 3 days, and then got on a train up to Simferopol, and then took a taxi from Simferopol down to Alupka. And I was in Alupka for 9 months, and that situation didn't seem real super stable. And I had been coming into Yalta a lot, and I'm like, wow, I really like Yalta. So after 9 months, I decided to move to Yalta, and that's when I met the other amigos.
I'll tell you what, that takes a whole lot of internal fortitude to leave the United States behind, selling all your assets and flying halfway across the world to Mongolia and then up to Siberia, and then down to Crimea. That took an awful lot of, I don't know what. In Espanol, they would say took a lot of cojones. Your mission here has been really quite different and extraordinary. Most people who have emigrated from the United States, especially to Russia, have either come because of religious conviction, Russian Orthodoxy, or the belief that they needed to come here with their families to get away from the neoliberal philosophy and thinking in the United States, in the West. And they believed that traditional values were held and were defended here in Russia. or they came here because they needed to find out for themselves the truth about Russia, suspecting that what their government had been telling them, as you indicated, was purely false.
Yeah.
But your journey has been really interesting. And I'm going to bring Richard in here. Now, the people who have been following me and on this show basically know why I came here. But just in brief, for anybody that's not familiar, I came here as a documentary filmmaker in 2016 to complete a film that was about the danger of nuclear war between the United States and Russia. I no longer believed anything that my government had been telling me my entire life, and I had to come here to find out the truth about Russia and the Russian people. And on my first trip here, I visited Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Crimea. That was in 2016, 2 years after the coup d'etat orchestrated by the United States in Kiev that led to this war that's been going on now for 12 years. And I believed that I had begun to find the truth. And I came back again on 2 other trips, 2018 and 2019, with 2 large groups of citizen diplomats. And I traveled to another dozen cities, towns, and even villages around Russia. And I started thinking, you know, the cost of living here, as Richard was saying, wow, for me, retired on a pension, Social Security, I could live here like a middle-class person comfortably, better than an awful lot of Russians who, you know, the standard of living here was not what it is in the United States. Income is not what it is here as it is and was in the United States. And I started thinking, you know, I'm not happy with what's happening in the United States. I'm not happy with what the government is doing. I was very unhappy with what the government was doing to Russia. And I felt as a filmmaker that I had to come here, and eventually I had to stay here, which happened in 2020, 1 week before COVID shut everything down. And my purpose was basically to use my filmmaking and video skills to try to show people in America, in the United States primarily, the truth as I saw it and discovered it about Russia, about the Russian people, about Crimea, and about life here. So each of us came here for really 3 different reasons, but I want to focus now on we came, we saw, we stayed. And Richard, I'm going to throw it over to you first. Why did you stay and decide to stay in not only Siberia, but once you moved here to Yalta? I forget how many years ago, but you can fill it in. So why did you decide to stay?
Well, I got married in July of 2014, and my wife, she was retired. She was a professor, teacher in college in 33 years in Krasnoyarsk. Krasnoyarsk is a million people. So I lived in the big city of Krasnoyarsk, but she also had a summer home in Khakassia, 240 miles south of there. Like Peter was saying, that would be about 750 miles north of Ulaanbaatar, Mongolian border, geography speaking. So what we would do is we go down around April to Khakassia and open up the house and just grow as much food as possible. We lived in a small village. It was a wonderful experience. For 7.5 years, we did this. We would grow all our own food. We had a root cellar and stuff. And then when the winter really set in around October, November, sometime we would close the house up, go back in to Krasnoyarsk, the city, and sit out the west the winter of January and February, very cold, December, January, and February. We usually would go sometime, usually after January 10th, the holiday. We'd book a flight to Vietnam or Thailand, Turkey. We went several times to all of those places. To get out of the cold and just go take a vacation before, and then come back, maybe 3 weeks or a month later in March, and then sit out for another month, and then go back and start it all over for the summer with the autumn harvest. And it was a wonderful life. I learned so much in Siberia. I loved it. There is 4 seasons there, although autumn is very short. But I learned a lot there. It was just almost like a karmic thing with me. It was just, it was a thing for me to go there and understand that and to learn that. And I do dearly miss living in Siberia. I really do. Well, come around to 2021. Around, we were just finishing up the harvest of the vegetables and everything. And my wife's son had come to Yalta in May, and he was working there here in Yalta. And he says, we missed Rahman, her son, we missed him. And he said, what are you guys doing? Why don't you button up the house like normal? Instead of going to, why don't you come over here and stay here the winter? Because in Crimea, the winters are nothing like Siberia. It's like Northern California weather. It's beautiful. And we said, yeah, well, we just decided, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So we packed up our Volvo, and Nikita, my wife's grandson, and me drove 5,200 kilometers, 3,500 miles, and we drove that trip from Khakassia region through the Kemerovo Oblast to all the way through Novosibirsk, Samara, into Volgograd, took us 5 days, and we drove it. And then when we got here, we just started setting up, and we've been here ever since. The house is still sitting out in Siberia, but nobody's been living in there for 5 years. We love it here. The winter's beautiful. A place, especially Yalta here, and all the whole Crimea Peninsula, it's a wonderful place to retire. By Russian standards, it's kind of expensive. Like we were talking about, our pensions here go a long way. If you're an American, you got a decent, even a halfway decent pension. If you come over here to live, you can live big and really live well here and live with dignity here. You're not worrying about them constantly jacking up your electric bill 300 to 400%. I see that happening, my friends, all the time. They've got like a $700 electric bill and $1,000 a month electric heating bill for their home, and they're retired. And it's really eating into them in America. Here, no problem. As a matter of fact, I wrote down some things. Electric, gas, and water. Most of my utilities for the month of January came out to $36.26. That was the electric was 744 rubles, $9.64 my electric bill. My gas bill, we jacked the heat up big time because it was you got to admit it was pretty cold here in January, and to heat my apartment here was $18.64, and the water bill came to $7.98. One other thing,
Richard, wait a minute, stop,
yeah.
Richard, please. Stop giving away all this stuff. You know what? If you keep talking like this, we're going to get inundated by Americans.
Yeah, I think so.
Let them come and be tourists, spend their money, and then go home. We don't want them living here, Richard. You're making the case like they could live like royalty here.
My Wi-Fi was $9 for the month. It was 700 rubles, and my cell phone service at 500 rubles, $6.48. Cell phone. So So like that, like I'm saying, even if you're just only Social Security, you can live with dignity. Don't do ways about it.
Uh,
Lovely
yeah,
life. It really is. And you could travel and go on vacation once or twice a year, no problem. Well, just on Social Security.
yeah.
Really, I'm not exaggerating.
No, I know you're not. I've said it many times. Just on my small Social Security and two small pensions from two stints in state government in the United States, um, I have been able to live frugally, modestly, but incredibly comfortably. Um, anyway, I was kidding about. Jesus, we don't want too many Americans coming in here and flooding the place. You know, when I came here, I was the only one that was really living in Yalta, and then you two dudes showed up, and I went, oh, okay. I don't know if I want to befriend them. Maybe they'll go away. Anyway, yeah, Richard, I appreciate that. I'm gonna throw it over to Peter now. And so, Peter, you came a really crazy circuitous route.
Yeah.
You decided to stay, and I have to ask you now, why? What have you discovered? Whoops. Peter, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Can you see me? I'm here. I think I'm here. I don't know what's going on now. Hello? There I am. Okay. Well, I think I had a pretty good idea of what Russia was like before I came here, but you really don't know what things are really like until until you live in a place. And I found right away that my research had been confirmed that Russia really was a good place. The Russians are really good people, and that things here in Russia are very stable, very although what's going on in Ukraine is very concerning. That it's and I really it was the right move for me. And now I feel at home. And I try to explain to Russians when they ask me the difference between the U.S. and Russia today. And I said the best way to describe it is Russia today is like the U.S. was in the 1950s. It's still very conservative, very family oriented. I mean, every day I'll go to the cafe here and I'll see families walking with their young children, or almost every day I'll see every day I'll see a baby carriage of you know young mothers pushing their babies too. But everything else is confirmed too that the the economy here is extremely stable. In fact, I think Russia now is one of the strongest economies in the world, although you would know that by talking to people. The US government says the opposite, says the Russian economy is in trouble. There's no sign of this at all. In fact, there are signs that the economy here is booming. A good example of that, this last summer at the beach, there was a record number of people who came here to Yalta. It was crowded with people, and they were everywhere in cafes, hotels, restaurants. But one of the things I really love about this part of Russia too is it reminds me a lot. I lived in Florida for 10 years, and we're right on the Black Sea here. So this actually reminds me a lot of North Florida where I lived. The A lot of tourists, like in North Florida, tourists in the summer will come and just come to the beach in the summer in North Florida, to the Panhandle. The same thing here, but it's Russians coming from St. Petersburg or Moscow or actually other parts of Russia come long distances to come to the beach and to be at summer vacation. But there's no, with sanctions, they haven't done anything. In fact, I think the sanctions have done the reverse of what the West intended. actually made Russia stronger. But with sanctions, there's no lack of anything here. I mean, I can get anything here in Russia that I could get in America, literally anything. Every grocery store is full of fresh, mainly organic food. The Russian government has outlawed GMO food. So the food is healthier. The environment is healthier. Here in Yalta, we have these big mountains behind us and the beautiful Black Sea in front of us. And I live actually very close to the sea. I was lucky to find an apartment very close to the sea here and very close to the center of town too. But yeah, maybe I shouldn't say all these great things because there's Regis, like you saying, when people this is North Florida, what North Florida was 40 or 50 years ago. It was still kind of undiscovered. A lot of people don't know about it. But I'm convinced a lot of Russians, when this nonsense in Ukraine ends, a lot of Russians will, have a second home here, or vacation home, or an apartment, but I think internationally too, when people discover Yalta and southern Crimea, that I think I'm convinced, not just Crimea, but I'm convinced when a lot of people in the West see what's coming with this storm I described, they're going to look at Russia and go, Russia looks pretty good. Still very conservative, and it's the leaders I believe are the best leaders in the world today. And I don't say that from it's a very clear-headed comparison between Western leaders and Russian leaders. Russian leaders are some of the smartest leaders in the world today, just bar none. And they're good leaders.
Peter, I don't know why I keep losing you. Let me get back here. There we go.
There we go.
I need a technical producer is what I need. I'm pushing the wrong buttons here, and no, I think your story and your insight is very tempting and very convincing to people, especially from the United States. When they hear you compare, and all three of us really, what living here is like, especially in Yalta, which is a dream resort. It's as beautiful as anything anywhere. The French Riviera, I don't care. I've been there. Yeah. Here it is more ordinary. It's not the high and the mighty who are flying in there on their jets, or we can't even do that anymore, but they're not coming here on their private yachts. So it is just ordinary people coming here from Russia. The cruise ships don't come here anymore because of the sanctions, which has hurt tourism in the sense of international tourism. But because Russians can't travel to too many places, they can go to Vietnam, they can go to Thailand, they can go to Turkey, but they've been discovering Crimea. And especially, as you mentioned, Yalta, record millions, I don't know what the number is right now, but who flooded Yalta itself, much less this entire Crimean coast. Now, you mentioned the economy and how you researched this before you came, and it was one of the major reasons why you came, because you saw that the Russian economy was strong. In fact, last year, I don't know who is it, IMF or the World Bank, said the Russian economy had surpassed Japan to become the number 4 largest, most stable economy in the world. Now, if you listen to American propaganda, the economy is falling apart. Russia is ready to crumble. This war in the Ukraine was supposed to bleed Russia dry. But what you, I, and Richard have discovered, the economy here is booming. There's construction everywhere. New roads, new highways, new apartment buildings, new office buildings, new shopping centers, I don't care where you go, there's construction going on everywhere, and that means jobs. That means hardly any unemployment. But talking about the economy now, and I'm going to bring Richard into this because the three of us have been talking about the economy, well, for several months now. And, we don't get paid. I don't get paid for doing promotions, commercials, and online ads. There's no firewall here or anything, but we have discovered that Russia's largest bank, and I'm going to mention it because I don't have any issue with that, Sberbank, is Russia's largest bank.
Yeah.
The Russian government owns 51 or 52%, a majority share in this bank. Now, Peter, I'm going to put it to you first this time. Talk to us about Russian banking system, the Russian central bank, the Russian government, and what is happening in your view, who studied the economy for many years, not only here, but in the United States. And then I'll throw it over to Richard. I'm going to keep the three of us on so I stop hitting the wrong button.
Okay.
Peter, your take on the economy here, and not just that we can find anything we want in the stores or online. They have two organizations that rival Amazon in terms of online purchasing. Talk to us a little bit about the economy and how you see it and why you think it is so stable.
Well, I think the stability of the Russian economy actually started around 2014 when there was this coup in Ukraine. Then those were initial sanctions that were put on Russia because of the steps that Russia took to protect Crimea and have the Crimean vote. But those sanctions were actually kind of the first. The Russian government said, okay, we need to take some steps to decouple from the Western economic system because these sanctions are going to be something that we're going to have to deal with. So that was actually a blessing in disguise because it's very limited right now. But this is a system they developed specifically because of those initial sanctions. Now, over time, what the Russian government did too is starting to slowly. They had U.S. government bonds. With those initial sanctions, they started saying, "Okay, we need to start weaning ourselves off of U.S. government bonds," which was a good thing. So now, I don't know. I think it was 280 billion at one point. I think that was the height of how many U.S. bonds. Now it's less than $1 billion. So it's almost negligible now, the amount of debt. But if you look at the of U.S. government bond debt that Russia had, now there are some key economic numbers that are just amazing. How good a job Russia's done with their economy is the debt to GDP level today is around 15%, which is insanely low. This just means Russia has almost no debt, government debt. And, well, not none, but it's extremely low relative. I'll give you an example. The U.S. Debt to GDP right at this moment is like 125%. And I think that number is actually low. I think that number the U.S. is saying is they're overinflating the GDP number and they're underinflating the debt. So I think that number is much higher, but the official number, even at 125%, that's insane. Because if you get to 100% or above, you're considered a banana republic.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Russian economy today, essentially with the latest sanctions, they've almost completely decoupled from the Western financial system and the West forced this by doing something I would call it using an economic nuclear bomb. Is they decoupled Russia from the SWIFT system, and Russia was kind of like, "What did you guys just do?" Now, the U.S. has shot itself in the foot by doing this because other countries saw this and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! The SWIFT system's not supposed to be political, like at all." So what the West just did is literally like an economic nuclear bomb. So Russia said, okay, we don't really need you guys anymore. And then, the West did something really stupid again. They froze 300 billion of Russian assets outside of Russia. And that's another thing that the world saw and said, this has never been done before. What do you guys, this is crazy. But the point is, each step the West has taken, it's actually made the Russian economy stronger because Russia's a part of the BRICS, which is an alliance of, it's China, India, Brazil, South Africa, but it's bigger. BRICS is bigger now. It includes countries like Iran, and it's adding actually more countries as we speak. But this BRICS alliance, if you look at its total GDP, it surpassed the GDP of the G7, which includes U.S., in 2020, 6 years ago. So the GDP of the BRICS countries is bigger than the G7 today. So the economic war, it's already over. The West just refuses to acknowledge this fact. And Russia now has stronger alliance with China, stronger alliance with India. Russia
And the global, the global South, all of the global South.
Yeah.
So, Richard, what's your? Do you agree with Peter?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've been here since 2014, and like I said, when I first went to Krasnoyarsk, I was really impressed with the building, the booms, the derricks, and the new buildings being built up. And I mean big high rises. So, and all I've seen since 2014, I've been here going on 13 years now, is an emerging middle class, a huge emerging middle class. And everywhere I went, not just in Siberia, I'm talking about here. And when you, like you talked about, you drive around here in Crimea here, in Yalta, and you can just drive up to Simferopol and look at all the buildings in Simferopol and the new highways being built here, the infrastructure. Or take a train ride like we do a lot of times going over to Armenia or going into Batumi in Georgia, and just go through the Sochi area. What a fantastic region that is. And that's booming over there. Adler, Sochi. Sochi is like 78 kilometers. It's huge. But it goes all along the Black Sea. And even the outlying areas, Tuapse and going into Novorossiysk, those are all beautiful areas. And they're all booming, really.
Richard, stop. You're making this too inviting. Too many people are going to want to come here, damn it.
The Russian economy is super fantastic. And I think, I think Putin told during the Tucker Carlson interview, he was talking about, the United States weaponizing the dollar. That's the wrong thing to do. And what I've seen here, going back even from 2014 when they started the sanctions, I noticed that at first the Russians were kind of like, oh my God, what are we all going to do? But back in 2014, then they started taking over businesses like, they told McDonald's, to hell with it. You want to get out of here, go ahead. Now they got tasty things, much 100% better than McDonald's, and their business is fantastic. And there's other ones. Not just that, the Russians have really got to the point where they're saying, we got to start making a lot of shit for ourselves, and they are doing it. I've noticed over the 12 years, they are doing it, and all I've seen over the 12 years is going in the stores and seeing more and more Russian-made goods, and the quality of it is pretty damn good. I mean, really, I got to give them a lot of credit.
Richard, thanks to the sanctions, it forced Russia to become self-sustaining in terms of food production, agriculture. You've talked about train rides over different parts of Russia. The fields of grain and barley and wheat they're stretched for kilometers. And you're talking about American and European companies leaving here. Russia has taken over many of those companies, including automobile manufacturing. They're producing as good of automobiles as anybody. The Chinese are in here now producing electric vehicles, which is kicking the U.S. out of that whole market. And I have to laugh because you talk about, you're both talking about, you can find anything you want here that you had in America. Gillette Foamy and Gillette Gel shaving cream, Gillette razor blades are still made here. The price compared to what it is in the United States for a 4-pack of those, whatever the latest is, I can't remember, is so cheap. It's unbelievable. We have to stop talking like this. There's too many people that are going to be interested in coming here. I want
the market.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say also every year since 2014 I've been here because I've noticed, and President Putin was talking about, that Russia will be the leader in organic food production and exports. And every year, like you talk about going over in that Stavropol region, you want to talk about black dirt. Now, I guess Ukraine has good black dirt. But I've seen some of the beautiful soil in my life going through the Stavropol region. It's beautiful. They talk about some production. It's there. I've seen it with my own eyes, especially then out in Siberia, same thing.
You mentioned the quality of the food.
Oh yeah.
You can go to any supermarket, and there's some big chains here in Crimea that is typical big chain supermarket stores. The food is all really good. Yeah. But the three of us, we've been known to go to the local markets, and you buy directly from the farmer. So you're buying dairy products that you will not find in the grocery store. These are from small farmers. You will find beef that is locally grown. And we always look for beef from the Tatars because they have a religious thing about these are all grain fed. They're not fed any kind of produced foods or anything like that. And the whole process of killing the animal and taking the meat from the animal, preparing it, and selling it in their own shops. You're assured that the stuff is fresh. You're assured that it is, farm raised, field grazed beef or sheep, or they love mutton and sheep here. It doesn't matter what it is. You can be assured that this food is not only safe, but it's delicious and it's fresh. All right, with the time that we have left, which is not a whole lot, and I'm never really concerned about cutting it off, but there is a limit to, I think, what people can take. If you're watching this, wherever you're watching it, on YouTube, on Facebook, or X, please give a thumbs up, give a like. It's really important to help us get the message out. And the message that we're trying to get out is what we found here in Russia and the Crimea is the truth. What we have been telling you is unfiltered. What we are telling you is not Russian propaganda. We are not Kremlin assets. We are not Putinistas. We are three independent Americans who came here, who found, who loved it, and who have stayed. Now, I want to finish on this note, because if it's not made clear, we have about 5 minutes left. Richard, why have you stayed, and will you stay?
Would I stay? You said.
Why are you staying, and why will you stay here?
Because it's just a fantastic life. I've been, living here with dignity, and everything's been working out very well as far as that's concerned. I love, I love, I do still love America and the people in there. I don't like the situation they're going through, the unnecessary trauma they're going through. I hope they can see the whole thing was pretty much spelled out by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a famous Russian author, and he talked about the things that Russia went through. It took them 70 years to get rid of the cancer that is now have a stranglehold in the United States. Okay, there's no two ways about it. And until the people wake up and kick that out, they're going to be under this low frequency fear grid and the whole situation they're under. Russia's got rid of them. In 2000, they got rid of them. And they've been nothing but the prosperity and an emerging middle class, and the economy and everything is good. One other thing, too, is I'm pretty sure around 2016, the Russian Federation stopped paying any usury to the central banks. They stopped that. Any situation that the Russian central bank has with the Rothschild banking cartel is very a loose connection. They uncoupled from them and pay any interest. And if the United States would get their stuff together and stop paying $1.3 trillion for faked up money, and then to run, be incompetent, run an incompetent lifestyle, that's all they got to do is start printing their own money like the Russians are doing. It goes a long, long way in prosperity to get rid of that cancer they have at the Federal Reserve.
Peter, why are you staying?
Well, I knew Russia was a good country. I just didn't know how spiritual it was. But I think today Russia is the last real major Christian country. And I think it's because the Orthodox Church here is still very strong. And there's, like you said earlier, that there's some very, very strong family values. I mean, I've never had children, but I think I want to be married again and have children. There's no way I would raise children in the West today, anywhere. And I would feel perfectly comfortable raising children here because it's healthy, it's normal. The education system now, I believe, is actually better than the education system in the U.S. And almost without exception, most Russians I talk to, especially young Russians, they're very well informed about what's going on in the world. Where if you talk to most younger Americans, they have no clue. They don't even have any clue what's going on in America, much less outside of America, in America. But here you talk to Russian kids and they know America better than American kids do, which I find entertaining. But no, like I said, Russia today is like the U.S. of the 1950s. Still very normal, very conservative, very family oriented. Now, I'm not saying Russia doesn't have problems, because it does. I think any society has problems. But today, Russian leaders and Russians, I believe, are committed and on a right path of a spiritual path, a moral path. And Russia's just a good country with good people. And I wish more Americans understood this, but it's every day I see how good this country is. And I try to, I talk almost 2 or 3 times a week to friends back in America and say, hey, this is normal. It's healthy. You should consider coming.
Well, the three of us, obviously, we came, we saw, we found the truth, we fell in love with the place. We have an awful lot in common. The journey here was different for all three of us, which is kind of interesting because no matter who you are or where you're coming from, your journey may be similar or dissimilar. But the bottom line is, once you get here, your eyes are opened and you either think about, oh, Russia's not so bad. Russian people are pretty nice. And you also might be thinking, well, I could move there. I could be happy. There is one difference between Peter and Richard and I. We married Russian women, and it's not why we stay, because it's not like a boat anchor. It's because it added just another level of understanding and acceptance on why we want to stay. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching it on X, if you're watching on Facebook, please share it. Give a thumbs up or a like. It's really helpful. We're a very small producer, but the content that people will find on this show is so different than anything else you're going to get from the big podcasters that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and viewers. You won't find the content. You won't find the guests like I have had on this show, for the last 6 years, really. And now it's over 760 of shows like this. The other show that I've been doing is Did You Know This About Crimea? So much history and culture that I've covered since I've been here. And the downside of that is if too many people see it, they might want to come here, Peter and Richard, and we don't want to have an American community living here any larger than the three of us. Guys, thanks. I really enjoyed it tonight. I hope that people that were watching and will watch this, because it's being recorded as well. If they already are not Russophiles, if their eyes are not already opened, I hope that we've given them some personal, real life examples and experience of why we came and what we found. Thanks, guys. We'll do it again.